All right. Let's get this party started. Awesome. Mike the Beast. First day here and he's got a nickname. You want to say anything, Mike? You want to say anything about Awesome. All right, so as we get started, so we were just in the building, so while it's fresh, any building layout questions? Construction questions, why? It will seat, on paper it says 380. So give or take some in real life. I don't know if that means we'll get more than that, a little less, but that is a good question. So square footage-wise, about, if you took this little wall down and ignored, the square footage behind those walls, basically the square footage we have in here total, I think probably pretty similar to what that auditorium is. When did you guys say? The whole side in here is 6,000, including all that back there. The auditorium in there is like 4,200 or something. Okay, a little slightly bigger. But about 380. And I'm anticipating that what we'll do in the beginning is kind of recreate a similar setup that we have in here as far as like drape off the sides and just kind of use the center and have a really similar setup that we have right here so that we can kind of grow into it and not feel like we're in Old National again. And somebody said amen. Any other questions? Building layout, construction? I know. Oh, we're thankful for it, and we're thankful to be out. Yes, sir. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids' rooms right now. And then if you saw the room that is kind of beyond the kids' rooms where the carpet was and that all that junk was, that's kind of a TBD room, which will probably become kids right away. So we left some space open that we're not touching because we can kind of then grow into it and decide as we go instead of trying to guess right now what we'll need it for. Any other questions? Building layout?
Is there any classroom space like for adult type?
No. Well. Okay. Great. Yeah. Well, the question is, will the kids share with the adults if needed, Beth? Not on a Sunday morning. Always share, okay. Yes. Yes, ma'am. No, this space is going back, and so this will probably become leased out for something different. So we're moving out of here. We're moving out of the kids' space we're in right now completely, and we will be completely in the new spot. Yes, sir. There is not a kitchen planned. Well, there's a kitchen planned in my head, but not anywhere on paper. That'd be awesome. I'm down for that and whatever ideas you have. That's cool. Yes, sir. Will the current kids space be maintained or used? It'll not by us. That we will not be keeping the current kid space that we're in. Yes, sir. Do we have a first right of refusal on either this space or the current kid space? There's conversations going on about that. Yes. All right. Sorry? No office space for me. Or Sam, probably, I don't know. I'll figure it out. Yeah, Sam's got the mezzanine up there. That's great. Well, office space was the lowest priority, so we'll figure it out once we get in there. We'll be all right. All right, good to move on? Awesome. Good questions. Like I said, more time for questions at the end.
Beautiful stage, by the way.
Oh, thank you. And who all helped? A lot of guys in here helped with that. Thank you. The double stage. 2 stages, 1 for the price of 2. Everybody's favorite. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started on the other stuff that we've talked about. I've got a handout for you that you'll be getting later on the numbers side of things, so if that's your thing, get excited. It's going to be amazing. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about, like I said, we're kind of in the season of celebrating our 2-year anniversary as a church, which is really exciting, and I think it's an awesome time to be doing a meeting like this, and it's a pretty crazy time to be celebrating the fact that we're about to have a building like that. That's not normal, in case you didn't know. It wasn't ever really part of the plan, but we're excited about it either way, so that's really cool. So just wanted to do a little bit of overview for people who weren't part of Antioch, Indy when it started at my house, which is a lot of you weren't there. So First thing I want to talk about is where did the idea for Antioch, Indy come from? And there's a beautiful PowerPoint that Austin's going to be guiding us through as we go. So less than beautiful, but it's going to work. It'll be helpful. So where did the idea for Antioch, Indy come from? So when I went to Baylor for college in 2008, I got involved at a church in Waco, Texas called Antioch. And they were just a local church that when it started, it was a local church with a vision to plant churches all around the world. So it kind of birthed this movement of churches all around the world, and that's where I started following Jesus. And along the years of being in college and being in the college ministry there in Antioch, Waco, was able to be involved at different times and in different ways with other Antioch teams around the country and around the world. And one thing that blew my mind about being a part of Antioch at that time was this like global family thing, where I'd grown up in church my whole life, but I'd never tasted I'd never been a part of a people that were so intent on advancing something, like advancing the kingdom of God. And then it was this crazy thing where like we'd take a trip to Gulu, Uganda and meet up with these people we had never met before, but they were Antioch people. It wasn't just another organization. We'd go meet with Antioch people, and it was this weird thing where like you basically get off the plane and meet this person, and you've never met but your family. And it's kind of like that cousin thing or something where you're like, we're on the same page. We know what we mean. We know how we do this thing. Like we all kind of follow God with the same values and kind of the same DNA as we would say it. And it was just this crazy thing that I tasted over those 4 years of like, wow, this family this is a crazy thing to be a part of. And so as I was falling in love with Jesus, I was falling in love with this family of Antioch. I knew it's not perfect, but I want to be a part of this people for the rest of my life. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to go, but I want to do it with these people, whatever that means. So went through college, and then I did the Antioch Discipleship School, which we don't have time to get into that much, but it's the Antioch Discipleship School. And then after that, Heather and I, we had been married for about a year as I was finishing up the Antioch Discipleship School, and we were in Waco still, and we thought we were going to be there for 3 or 4 or 5 years, but it was becoming pretty clear that we weren't going to be there any longer because different things that we were involved in, we had kind of raised people up behind us, and nothing else was really opening up for us to do in Waco that made much sense. So we started asking this question, like, what do we do? What do we do? I'm doing the discipleship school. I'm doing door-to-door window cleaning sales part-time, and not a whole lot going on for me in Waco. And like the world's your oyster, right? Like, what are you going to go do? And we were down for anything, and so we asked some leaders around Antioch, Waco that had been investing in us for a few years, and basically said, you know us and you know the movement. What should we do? Where can we help? Not really anticipating being pastors or anything like that, but just we love these people. Where can we go be of assistance to somebody for something? Long story short, that list kind of got narrowed down to going to Dubai to be a part of some different things going on in the Middle East that Antioch's a part of, or going 100 miles down the road to College Station, Texas, where Texas A&M is, which I didn't know College Station was a real place. That's actually the name, College Station. And I thought that was a joke the first time I heard it. But there was an Antioch there that had started like 6 or 7 years or something like that prior. And they needed some help on staff. And so, again, long story short, we ended up moving to College Station to go be the associate college pastor at Antioch College Station. It was like about 450 people at that time, and about 300 of those were some college kids. So we went on staff there in September. In January, the lead pastor did some kind of organizational restructuring and said, hey, we're kind of doing some things differently around here. We're creating this executive pastor position where basically like I need kind of a right hand to do different things. Do you want to take it over? And I'm like, what? I was like 24, and he's like basically handing over his church in a lot of ways. And I was like, this is weird. So Heather and I go home that night. He's like, can you let me know tomorrow if you're down for it? Which is very much his style, and I appreciate that about him. So he said, will you let me know tomorrow? And Heather and I talked about it that night, and we came down to it was like, hey, we came here to help them, and they're asking us to do it. So if we're bad at it, it's not our fault. They asked us. So yes, we'll do it. So jumped into that and did that for about 2 years, which was a little bit of everything from accounting to young adults, college, families, some preaching, led the discipleship school for 2 years, all kinds of different stuff. So got to taste a little bit of everything being in that role. And along the way, I got to be a part of different gatherings with Antioch leaders from around the country. So like the senior pastors and executive pastors would get together like once a year to kind of get on the same page from stuff. So we were at one of those gatherings in Dallas with the leaders from the other, whatever it was, 25 churches at the time, and was sitting down with the senior pastor of Antioch, Waco, who's like the president of Antioch, kind of started the whole thing, still leading the whole thing. His name's Jimmy Seibert. And we got talking, and he just threw it out there one time, like, "Hey, what are you gonna go do after this?" I'm like, there's no plan. Like, I came here to help, and I had told Tyler in College Station, because he had asked me, what do you want to do next? And I just told him, like, hey man, I can only focus on one thing at a time and be any good at it. So when you tell me I'm ready to think about something else, you tell me, and we'll kind of go there. So 2 weeks later, Jimmy sits me down and says, "Hey, what are you gonna go do next?" And I'm like, I don't know. There's no grand plan. And he said, "Would you ever go start a church in Indianapolis?" And I was like, I don't know. I've sort of thought about it, but not really. Like, never really wanted to come back to Indianapolis. Love Indy, but once I'm gone, I was gone. So he's like, "I think you should pray about it." And I said, like, actually pray about it, or are you just saying it? He said, actually pray about it. I was like, okay. And that was pretty much the extent of our conversation. So that launched us on about 8 months of prayer and fasting and seeking God. I'm like, God, what did we do? Because on paper, we knew we were doing it. We knew it made a ton of sense. But there was just some things that God needed to do in our own hearts to actually get us really excited about it. Because honestly, the last thing that I wanted to do is move back to Indianapolis and just do another church. And I know a lot of different church leaders in town. There's a lot of great churches. And I was like, we're willing to go anywhere and do anything. Like, Indianapolis, like another church? That sounds miserable. So not just because all I had ever known was like lame church, frankly, like I just didn't I don't know. I can't even go into it, just being honest, So I'm not saying I was right. I'm just being honest. So basically it came down to, okay, God, I know that you're telling us to do this, but I need you to like put it in my heart to do it, not just like go do it, because that's not going to be good for anybody. Starting with me and ending with everybody else, that's not going to be good if we're actually not even into this thing. And so I remember spending time with God one day in our College Station house and just praying, like, God, what are you saying? Are we doing this? Are we not? What is this supposed to be? What are you saying? And essentially kind of some different things I had been studying in the Bible and God had been doing in our hearts. It all kind of just came together in this moment, and I believe God really spoke super clearly to my heart this phrase, preach the gospel of the kingdom and make others great. And this has happened like maybe one other time in my life. I came flying out of the room, found Heather. I'm like, babe, God just said something to me that changed my life forever. I don't really know what it means, but like it's going to change my life forever. I feel like what God did is he gave me kind of vision for my own life personally, and that now bleeds over into this church. That this isn't about being another church that does churchy things. What I want to actually live for and something that I can die for is the mission to proclaim this good news of the kingdom of Jesus and do it with a heart and an attitude and a motivation to make others great. In other words, to get under everybody else to be all that God's called them to be. And so when God said that, I thought, oh my gosh, that I can live for that. I can die for that. I'll do that for that's so much bigger than some just churchy thing. And so that was pretty much the moment where we're doing this and it's going to be awesome. So that's how we got really excited. That's how the idea for Antioch Indy came. We ended up staying another year on staff in College Station to help the transition go smoothly. But that's really what got us into it, is why did we decide to do it? Because God put the vision in our hearts to preach the gospel of the kingdom and make others great. So that's why that's our vision statement, and it is and will be, and forever we will do that. Amen? So that's kind of why we decided to do it. The next question that gets asked to people who are going to plant churches is, who's your target audience? And I really hated that question. And I thought, I get it kind of, but I hate it. Like, why do I have to have an answer to that question? Because isn't it everybody, But everybody tells you that everybody is a really bad target audience. Everybody in business says you can't have a target audience of everybody. And so we started praying through, God, who's the target audience? And working through that, we just landed on, you know what? The target audience is actually Jesus. He's the target audience of this whole thing. And that set us free and got us really excited. And so you can know that the target audience of our church isn't you, it's not me, it's not your friends or neighbors, it's Jesus. Because that's why we're here. That's why we worship, and that's why we do what we do the way we do it. And I've been a part of enough things trying to work through what's everybody going to think, And I think it's a good question. We got to work that through on some level, but it's definitely not the most important thing. if I have one person show up to this and it's the King of Kings, I've done a good job. So that's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. And that's kind of how we think through things. People and us, like my personal preferences absolutely will come through, on stuff that we do because that's just how it goes, and that's fine. But the target audience, the one we're going for, the reason we're doing this, the one we're trying to impact and have effect on is Jesus in our worship, in our preaching, in our ministries, and whatever that is. So that's our target audience is Jesus. So who's the demographic? Who's going to make up our church is kind of the next question. And another question I really didn't like, because what's the age? What's the, what are you going to go for? All that kind of thing. And I thought, again, okay, fair question, but I don't like it. So what's the answer? So we started praying, saying, God, who are we? What are we going to be about? And the demographic that God put on our heart for the people that we're basically going after is not really by virtue of us trying to do this. It's just going to be a byproduct of who we are, that I believe our demographic is passionate people who want more of God. That's the people we're going to attract. That's the people who are going to stay here. And I think that you don't necessarily have to want more of God to be passionate, but if you're passionate, it's not too long until you want more of God. So that doesn't mean that we're only here for people who know Jesus. That's not true at all. But I know it's true in my life, and I've seen it true over and over and over again, that if you have passion, it's because you're born for God. And when you start to taste him, you realize, oh, he's the real thing. Basically, my dad's sermon today was all about that. So that's why we started to do it. That's our target audience is Jesus, and the demographic is passionate people who want more of God. And that is not, the demographic doesn't necessarily guard or determine what we do and how we do it. Like I said, I think it's just going to kind of be how it goes. Like, if you're not passionate and if you're not hungry, this probably just isn't going to be the place for you. Nobody's going to kick you out. You're just not going to like it. Like, you're just not. Because we're passionate and we're really hungry for God. And so we're not going to not do that. So if you don't want to do that, this is probably, you can, bless you, find a place that's awesome doing something different. But that's just kind of it, So there's that. Awesome. So all of that leads to us moving here in the summer of 2016. So we moved 2 years ago this week, which is super crazy. I think last week, the 16th or something. But anyways, so we closed on our house in College Station to sell it on Monday, drove to Indy Monday and Tuesday, closed on our Indy house on Wednesday, moved in Thursday and Saturday, and Sunday we had our first meeting in our house. It was fun. So we had spent January, February, March of 2016 coming for like a weekend at a time and doing interest meetings at my parents' house. And we never asked anybody to jump into our church, but there was like these 25 people and their 25 kids who said, like, literally, who were like, hey, we want to be a part of this thing. So before we moved, we had a church, and that was not what we were expecting. But we thought, well, okay, I guess we start having church. So that's why we started church. That summer in our house on a Sunday morning, adults in the living room, kids in the basement and the back patio, and we made it work. And it was awesome. It was really fun. So we started services, and we spent the summer of 2016 kind of doing a sermon series, for lack of a better term, called Who Are We? Because we gathered our first time, and who was there? In here. Yeah, that's awesome. That's so good. Love it. So we did this series called Who Are We? And we were trying to answer this question because, I told everybody, I said, hey, we're all really excited about this, but we don't even know each other. And frankly, none of you even really know what this is all about. I don't even know, honestly, there was some people like, I don't even know why you're here or how you got here, but this is awesome. So one thing I did, though, is look around the room and say, wow, these are some incredible people. God wants to do something. And it's still true. It's more true today, even. Look around this room. You're like, dang, okay, some powerful people in here. This is going to be fun. So we started doing this series, Who Are We? And every week we just kind of talked about values of who we want to be. And I remember that first Sunday in our house telling everybody, do not invite anybody to this, please, because we're not trying to grow this right now. I'd asked God, Lord, what's the vision for the summer of 2016? And he said to me, take the summer to take strangers and create family so that you invite people home and not to an event. I was like, man, I could have thought of that, but I didn't. That's God. So that's what I told everybody. That's what we're going to do. We're going to try to become family because nobody needs another event in their life, but everybody needs to come home. And so that's what we set out to build that summer and set some DNA and all of that sort of thing. And really that mission has carried on to today. it really has been what these first 2 years have been all about. All of that leads up to our launch at Old National Center, September 11th, 2016. We had our first service at Old National, which it's a whole story of how we even got into Old National, but that was cool. And we had no idea what to expect. So for the first 4 weeks, we had 350 chairs out. And we're just like, I don't know. And we had no money to launch or do anything, but we just thought, my whole attitude is like, hey man, this is Jesus. Everybody should be here. So I'm not going to get caught with too little chairs, So the first week, 137 people showed up, I think, including kids. The next week, I think there was less than 50, and we stayed there for a while. So mostly people came the first week to show support, which is great, but then not very many people came back, and that was fun. So after about 4 weeks, Old National was like, can we set up fewer chairs? I was like, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Great. So that's kind of where we were at. And something that we did to set culture, set values for who we are as a family. The first 10 weeks is we're just praying, what does it look like to launch? Because there's 1,000 different philosophies on how to do that. And that's great. But at the end of the day, I don't want to do what the book, what some book says or whatever, though that could be really valuable. We're just kind of saying, okay, God, how are you saying? What do you want to do with us? And maybe that works within the context of what other people do, but let's do what you're saying to do. So we had this thing in our heart the Bible says that, or Jesus says, where your treasure is, there your heart is. And again, I was like, I have no interest in building some church, just like a church, the thing. So we're here to see a city turned upside down with the love of Jesus. So how do we get our heart into the city? We put our money there. So we took our first 10 weeks of having services, and we just said, whatever comes in on any day, at any time for the first 10 weeks, we're giving away to different things in this city. And there wasn't we did the math and we can make it for 10 weeks. It was we never raised money to start this. It was crazy. So we just thought, well, we don't really care if it makes sense or not. We want a heart in this city, and Jesus says that it'll work. So that's what we're going to do. So for the first 10 weeks, each service, we had somebody from a ministry in town come and share, essentially during give and take, and say, I'm so-and-so, we do this and that in our city, and we would take an offering. And then at the end of the 10 weeks, we split up everything that we had brought in and gave it away to these 10 ministries. And this tiny little church of 50 or so people or 60 people or whatever it was in 10 weeks gave away $25,000 to our city. Isn't that bananas? Bananas. Crazy. So that was really fun. And then during our time at Old National, it had its ups and downs. And I just want to give a shout out to everybody who came and stuck at our church during that time, because most of the time it was just hard. Some days it was fun. There was a few fun days in there, but most of the time it was wow, what are we doing? At least that's what I was thinking. But God was doing something in all of us. And it's just, there's so much of even what you're tasting now in our church, which is because people decided to cultivate in that season. And we just believed that God was using Old National as a prophetic picture for us, because we were meeting underground in their underground venue. And we just believed that God was telling us that he had planted us and that he was doing root work. And someday it would matter for the growth that was going to come. And so that's what we believed and gave ourselves to. People did it. It wasn't cool. It wasn't always fun, but they did it. And they believed what God was building. And I think we're going to bear the fruit of it for a few decades. So it'll be really fun. As we headed into 2017, we started praying and asking God, Lord, what are you saying for our church for the year 2017? And one of the things that came out of that was a phrase, Old National is not your home, which we knew, but we'd only been meeting there for 3 months at the time, but we just felt like God was prompting us to start looking for the next place. We had no timeline really, but the word that God gave us over 2017 was, we're moving in. And we did a series to start off 2017 called We're Moving In. We believe that God was saying out of Joshua 1:1-9, that 2017 was going to be a year of moving into the promises of God. Just like the Israelites were moving into the promised land they've been promised for almost 500 years. And as part of that, we were believing that by the end of 2017, God was going to give our church a home, a building, by the end of the year. We had no idea where, what, how, whatever, but we just thought that that's what God was saying. So since I didn't know what I was doing, I decided to get smarter people around me. So we brought together the building team, the Antioch building team, and they're amazing. So I haven't listed off this team in a while. I hope I get everybody. It's my dad, David Brinkworth right here, Brad Huff, Mark Frazee, Chad Freegee. Me. Yeah, I don't get a superhero. So that is what it is. So I remember we brought together the building team. It was, this is a long story. We're going to try to keep it short, but this was crazy. So we get together the building team, I think February 7th of 2017. We sit around the table, and I bring these guys together. I'm like, okay, hey, we got to try to find a spot. And they're all looking at me like, okay, where do we start? And I was like, well, I don't know. Does anybody have any ideas? And nobody had any ideas. Like, we're like 5 minutes into this meeting. And they're like, yeah, we don't know. And I'm like, okay. And there was this one idea I had that I knew was a bad idea, but nobody else had any ideas. So I was like, well, I guess this is the only thing we have to talk about. So there was this building right here. And it's at 65th and Binford, and it's something I had driven past a lot. And I remember it's been vacant for like 10 years, and it was just this weird thing. It has like 13 acres of property, and I was like, man. I remember driving by one day and being like, wow, that would make a sick church for somebody. And then the next time I drove by, I was like, you know what, God, forget it. I want that to be our church. And so every time we drove by it, we'd pray. And even Rose, like we drive by it, she'd go, God, give us the building. And it was awesome. So we started praying, and this was before all this happened and everything. So at this meeting, I'm like, well, there's this one building at 65th and Binford, and they all looked at me like I was an idiot, because, I mean, it kind of was. But I looked at them, I said, hey, guys, none of you have any ideas, so until you have something else to talk about, we'll talk about this one. So we got some real estate people involved who just told us, like, it's been in bankruptcy for years. Nobody even knows who owns it. Like, you can't get any information on this thing. And I was like, shoot, we are at a dead end. Well, I had talked to somebody about it 6 months earlier, not involved in our church. It was like October, so a month after our church started, and I asked him if he knew anything about it, and he said the same thing. And I said, hey, you pay attention, because one of these days you're going to be part of a crazy ride, because that's going to be my church. And he was like, how many people do you have coming? I was like, don't worry about it. So we hadn't talked about it for 6 months. So February 7th we meet. February 1st we meet. February 7th I get an email from that guy months earlier and says, hey, your church is going up for sale. I was like, what? And he sends me a link on this. After 7 or 8 years of being in bankruptcy, it was going to be up for sheriff's sale the next week. And he was like, the judgment on it is $17 million. And I was like, that's better than nobody can touch it. So I was like, he goes to those all the time, those sheriff's sales. So I was like, I'm coming with you. I don't know why, but I'll come. So come, and it goes up for sale for $2 million. And the lawyers are there, and I'm like, hey, I want to buy the building. Who do I talk to? And they're like, hey, here's the owner's number. I was like, perfect. So I call that guy, and sets off this 4-month journey of where we literally came 12 hours away from getting this building. 45,000 square feet, 13 acres of land, $5 million, and no idea how we're going to do any of it. But it was this crazy ride because, it was months of conversations and all these sorts of things. And it was the craziest thing to be a part of this because God was in it. That's all I know. And like there would be times we're at the table, and sometimes I'd be the one fired up about it, and I'm like, I don't know why we're doing this, but God's in it for something. And then there was times I'm like, this is really dumb. And there'd be other guys in the building team like, dude, no, God's in this. I don't know what's going on. We were just bought in, and we had brought people into the church. Like we all went over there one day, like 35 of us, to pray and like put stakes in the ground with promises from God. Like God, use us to bring revival in the nations and all these sort of things. And our whole attitude was, maybe God just needs some people who are dumb enough to believe for big things in this city. So we don't have any answers. We don't have any money, but we're dumb enough to believe God. And I just kept telling people, I don't know. As far as I know, I'm the only one in this city sitting before God asking for it. So maybe we'll get it, unless somebody else shows up, because as far as I know, I'm the only one at the throne of God saying, hey, can we have it? So it was like, there was lots of days we were looking at each other like, oh, wait, oh, shoot, we're about to get the keys to this thing. Like, what are we doing? And so we got really close, and then another church came in and bought it from one of their campuses. Praise God. Northview Church, thank you. So they came in, and it was really cool. The morning I found out that they bought it, we had been writing down our promises that our whole church had been praying. I mean, most days of the week, there was people over there praying, saying, God, give us this building, this prayer, this promise, all these kind of things. I went and I met with their guy who was directing all that kind of stuff, and I got to hand him this piece of paper because we had started talking towards the end of negotiations, and I talked to him. His name's Jason. I said, hey, man, this has been crazy for us. This has been a wild journey. God's put more in our church through this whole journey than I could have ever dreamed. This has been wild. And I wish we could give you some money to go after this and all these sort of things, but all I have is a couple 100 hours worth of intercession on this page, and we bless you to take every one of these promises and see God move and do it with this building. And he was like floored. He had no idea what to do. So that was like really awesome that our church got to do that. And he said that's crazy because I don't really know you or your church much, but I need to hang around people like you guys more. It's like, that's a win. Something that God put us in that whole journey was this phrase, because it was like, we're looking for a church and we got very few people showing up, but this big dream from God and the kingdom. And it's like, okay, Lord, where do you start? Because now we're at ground zero again. It was, I think, June or something. We believe in God to give us a spot by the end of the year. It's like time's running out. Like, Lord, where do we start? We don't know what to do. What's big? What's small? Like, what do you do? And I've had God put this phrase in our heart: don't think big or small, fast or slow, only be faithful. And this phrase has become huge for me in my own life, and also for us in our building journey. So we just started looking at anything and everything and saying, like, it doesn't really matter how big it is or how small it is. It doesn't matter if we need to grow fast or slow, or none of those words matter because they're all relative. Like, that Binford building is huge compared to my house, but it's really small compared to like Lucas Oil Stadium or something. So like, who says it's big? What does it even mean? So God's just like, don't worry about it. Just have faith. Just be faithful. And we're like, okay, we'll do that. So we started looking around the city, knocking on every door. We got really close to a few buildings that were also praising God that we didn't get. Praise the Lord. Amen from the building team. So we started searching for different things. And then one day I get a call from somebody on the building team, drove past this shopping center, and he said, hey, there's 2 spaces that look like they're available in the shopping center. How about we call and see if we could get one of them? That's this space and the one next door, because this was a furniture store that was about to close. And so we called them and asked them if they'd be interested in leasing us any of these spaces. And their real estate agent said, actually, I just talked to the owners this morning, and they're not interested in being in commercial real estate anymore. So they're not going to lease anything to you. But if you want to buy the whole shopping center, they'd love to sell it to you. I was like, come on. Like, we've been down this road before. Then I was like, well, we've been down this road before. I guess what are the numbers on it? Because you're like, well, there's tenants. Like, could this make money? I don't know. Sure, whatever. So we asked questions. So the Binford building is 45,000 square feet. The shopping center is 45,000 square feet. I'm like, that's weird. And then it doesn't have 13 acres. Praise God, to take care of. That's awesome. And actually looking at the space and the layout of it is actually way more usable than anything that we were looking at at Binford. Like I said, there's no 13 acres to take care of. It was mostly leased, and there's a lot of bills getting paid. And it wasn't $5 million, it was $2.5 million. I was like, wow, still don't have that, but that's awesome. I mean, that's nothing compared to what we've done. And so we started just kind of saying, like, hey, what do we have to do? So we got a meeting with a bank and said, if we did want to do this, would you give us the money for it? Which I wasn't so sure we wanted to do that anyways. And their answer was basically, if you do want to do this, no. Like, fair enough. I don't blame you. So I literally walk out of that meeting and I'm contacted by somebody who I'm like minutes after walking out of this meeting. And I get contacted by somebody who says, hey, here, I know about your church, hear about what you guys are doing and going for, looking for a space, and just who you guys are and everything like that. And we just really believe in what you're doing and the way you're going after the kingdom and how you want to see the shopping center. If you were going to buy it, you want to see it be just a kingdom thing, not just a place for church and all of that. And basically said, I'm really into that too. So what if I buy the building and lease to you whatever space you want for about the same price that you're paying at Old National? I was like, I think that sounds really good. I'll pray about it, right? No. The answer is yes. So that's crazy, just in case you didn't know, or that's not normal for people to do that. So that was wild, and basically said you can have free roam on the whole place. So what do you want? And so that's how we got to this 12,000 square foot spot next door, and we kind of had this initial outline for it, which is essentially what you see it being today. And the cool thing is this person said, long term, like, I don't want you to have to be worried about putting money into a place that you're going to have to move from, and how do you navigate all that and all that sort of thing. Basically said, I'm fine if you end up using just those 12,000 square feet forever. That's amazing. Or if you start growing and you want to take over this whole thing, you're more than welcome to do that. was like, wow, okay, so what does that look like? Because just trying to be a good steward, like what's the most you could do in this place? Because if we're going to spend money on it and all that kind of stuff. So here's an overview of the whole shopping center and what the long distance plan could look like. It could look like exactly what we have forever, which is awesome, or it could, basically the ceiling capacity on this place, on this shopping center, is what you see here. So this place being offices, the whole spot next door would become like an auditorium, and then everything else would become everything else. And then Squealers is part of it too, so we could do some stuff there. There's a kitchen there. So there's plenty of room to play. And so we thought, well, I think we should go for it. So in October, mid-October, so we announced to our church, we've got this spot. Here's this miracle story. This is crazy. And we didn't have time to go to contractors and figure out how do you build this out. Again, didn't really have much money or anything like that. Still had whatever it was, 60-some people, 60-some adults on a Sunday morning and 150 kids or whatever it was. So we just announced to our church on a Sunday, mid-October, with 50 people there, hey, we're going to do this thing, and we think God's in it, and everybody's really excited. And so we had the question, what's it take to get there? And our initial guess was $300,000 is what we want to shoot for to raise to try to build this place out. We haven't gotten bids or anything, but we'll make it work. If we get $300,000, surely you can do enough for $300,000. So we aimed for that, and then the next thing was God said by the end of 2017 we'd have a home. So Christmas Eve was the last opportunity to have a service of 2017. So we told everybody, one way or another, we're doing church Christmas Eve in our new home, and we'll figure it out from there. So we were going to just set up a speaker and some foldable chairs, no heat, no nothing, but we were like, God said it, we're going to do it. So that set off a crazy, crazy journey, and over the next 9 weeks, between that day in October and Christmas Eve, our little church raised $300,000, and we moved in. Over the course of those 9 weeks, this spot opened up, which we didn't know was going to happen. And the landlord said we could have it for the time being until we get our construction going there. So instead of having Christmas Eve service over there in the cold, we started Sunday services here December 3rd. We had people from the church coming in a week. They turned it into something that looks really awesome, I think. And it's been working. So December 3rd is when we started here. And we did have Christmas Eve here and everything. And by the time we counted everything up, we had the money that we'd set out to raise as some tiny little church with nothing to go on, but we think God's in it. Yeah. It's crazy. Crazy. So that's how we got here. The next step was drawings, bids, construction, all of this. So the initial building project goals was $300,000 with a breakdown that would look something like this. Just put it all up there, Austin. So the initial goal was to set aside $220,000 of that for construction, split up the rest from signage, kids, decorations, and making it look okay, and then some audiovisual that we'll need to add moving over there. And again, these were numbers not based on what people were saying, but based on what we thought we could do for $300,000. It was it'll get us as far as we go, and then we'll figure it out past that. So that was the goal. As we went down to the plans and finally started getting bids around February or so, this is what the actual numbers started to look like. So the construction was slightly more than we anticipated by only $96,000. Not too bad. And then so once that kind of came in, we started looking at, okay, what's in our savings, what's our monthly surplus looks like, all of these sorts of things, and then how can we make some adjustments to other bits of the budget to try to make this work. So for being $96,000 over budget on the top line, being $66,000 over budget on the bottom line is pretty good, if you ask me. So especially considering it's not $17 million, right? So that's kind of where we were at the start, and we're looking at the numbers of everything that we had, and we thought, okay, well, it's going to take everything, but we're definitely not being stupid. We can do it. So we pushed go, and we started going. So one thing that's on there that we added is a marketing budget, and that's something that we're kind of seeing if we're able to do that as we start going. But something that's been really fun for us is, like I said, the journey has been to create a family so that we invite people home and not to an event. And that's what we've been doing for the last 2 years. And so over the last 2 years, we've spent $415 on letting anybody know that our church exists, past the signs. So it's been really fun to not we just haven't done anything for marketing. And now that God's putting us in a home, it just kind of seems right to say, okay, you said to invite people home. And it would be really fun to have some money to spend on just like some social media stuff and different things like that, and just start trying things and being like, man, now we have a home. We have created a family. And I think those of you who are new, that's the thing I've heard consistently from everybody is that this is family. And so you've tasted it. You know that this really has become a family. And the idea of being able to bust the doors wide open and invite a city home is really exciting. So that's just kind of some vision on that, why that's there, what we mean by that. I kind of think about marketing as kind of synonymous with evangelism. It's just sort of preaching the gospel, and we just call it marketing because it's a business term, right? Because you got to spend money on it. I don't know, whatever. But that's kind of that. So the question is, where's all that extra money coming from, right? And I already told you I'm not asking for money tonight, so you have to get your checkbooks out. Lock the doors. Nobody's leaving past the pale. Hey, some of you have been there for that. So how are we making up this money? Well, the good news is we're actually anticipating at this point a $20,000 balance in our budget by the time the project's over, even with a $66,000 over budget start point. So that's pretty awesome. So again, how are we doing this? Well, there's some different value engineering going on with the contractor that was really helpful. Our contractor going through different things and saying, hey, you could do it this way, that way, this way, that way. It'll be just as good, but a little bit cheaper. So let's sign us up. It's awesome. Our contractor is also actually being really generous with us in some different ways. That's really exciting. Our landlord initially had said that he would give us a few months of free rent, which is pretty normal for moving into a place, but once everything started to unfold, we were essentially told you can have free rent until you move into your spot. So we're still not paying to be here. So that's amazing. So that adds up. And then something else that's been huge is just frugal planning and being generous with kids and audiovisual stuff. The audiovisual is going to be less than half of what we anticipated, which gets me pumped up because I don't like spending tons of money on that stuff, but it's expensive. But we don't need to be fancy. We just need to make it work. So that's awesome. And then the last thing is just y'all's consistent giving and our best effort at stewarding things really well along the way. So all of that, we make up the $66,000 deficit and anticipated $20,000 balance at the end of it, which for, a church and kind of what our month looks like, it's not like $20,000 is a lot of money. That's not like absurd amount comparatively, but it's there. 20 grand is 20 grand. Amen, somebody. It's 20, okay, yeah. So we're really encouraged by that. The rest of the project, just so you know, we're projected to have like a mid-July finish date on the construction. Really exciting. So we'll plan on kind of first or second week of August, first service, which is exciting. And then you can expect that, over the next whatever the next time frame looks like, we'll be making adjustments and there will be tweaks to make as we get in and start using it and all that kind of stuff. We're not saying that we're moving in, it's going to be perfect for the next 5 years or whatever. The goal is do what we have to do now, and what we have to do as we grow, we'll do as we grow or as we use it or whatever. We'll figure it out. So we'll make adjustments as we go, but I think it's going to be really awesome. I'm excited about it. A last bit on this part is opportunities for you to help as the finish line approaches. So there's going to be different projects. So like we've built the stage twice, and that was tons of fun. So there's going to be a few things like that we have left to do where we're going to need people to pitch in to do that. So we have to finish the stage. They're going to carpet it, but then if we want to do any painting or anything like that of the stage, for example, any kind of decoration type of stuff, we have people leading teams to do that, but we'll need help with those sorts of things. We're going to be hanging acoustic sound panels around the auditorium. That's just a project we need help with. So there's going to be things like that. We're building some furniture, kids check-ins, different things. So as the project finish line approaches, you can be kind of listening for anything that you may be able to lend a helping hand to, and we can all pitch in and do it. So that's the miracle building story for those who didn't know. Pretty awesome, right? Awesome. All right, so now is the break. So we're going to take a break for 5 minutes or something. Does that sound good? Take a breath, go get a cookie, something to drink, use the bathroom, and we'll get going here for round 2 is going to be much shorter than the first round, I promise. All right. Let's get started on round 2. Come on in, grab your seat. You will see a handout that has the one page is kind of the building numbers that I just went over. if you want to look at them more. And then the other one has a lot of numbers on it. Some of those we're about to go over all together. Not something for everybody that everybody cares about, but you might. So that's why we made it for you, if that's your thing. As we get started, I want to give a shout out to the one and only David Brinkworth. Ladies and gentlemen, stand up and wave, David. So David is helping project manage the construction project and everything like that. So thankful. So he was in all the meetings with the contractor with me to help get the number down, which we did significantly, which is awesome. And so he helped with like 25 grand off the top of that, which is awesome. And helped with all kinds of different things. Helped look through the contract. He comes by and stops by a couple times a week to make sure things are going right and whip people into shape since I don't have to and I'm the pastor, right? he can be the bulldog. I don't have to. David, what would you like to share this evening? Here, take the mic. No, come on, David.
I didn't prepare anything.
I totally put him on the spot.
Well, if I'm going to do this, then no. Let me talk about Andrew for a second. So, no, this is fair. I don't know. We had like 6 different meetings with the contractor, and they were great. And he dealt with the Mitch construction or whatever, architects. But Andrew, at the young age of what, 29, he came more prepared than the contractors. And so every time we went into a meeting, Andrew would have spreadsheets and all this stuff put together. And the contractors would look at him and say, well, I think we have to do that. Andrew says, no, according to the blah, 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 we don't have to do that. No. Okay. So I was so impressed. Seriously, I didn't really have anything to do with other than just a little moral support. But Andrew came prepared, and honestly saved so much money for the church by knowing what to do and doing all the research. And he had never had a project like this before. And I had done some building contracts and stuff, I think that's how I got put on the team. So, but for him to come prepared and to put all of this together, really one person, he had, a couple of us guys showed up at a meeting and we didn't have a lot to say. But he did, so it's fair, I can talk all day about Andrew if we want to, but we don't. But he's the guy that's really making all this happen, and I think that's important for each and every one of you here to know. So, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks. I'm going to surprise him with the mic more often, so get ready. That feels nice. All right, so let's real quickly, we're going to go through some month-to-month financials. And the point of this is just to bring you in. And different people over the last 12 months have just kind of asked, nothing super intense or anything, but I think that it's totally fair for there to be a question out there of like, I'm sure everything's going great, but like, what are we doing? And like as we move in and as things happen in the church, I want to share this with you. You might or might not care about the numbers, but more than anything, I just want to show you kind of the inside of how we operate, what we're thinking, so that, like, let's say you show up on a Sunday morning and you're like, maybe you notice, like, oh, we just repainted a wall, or we just bought this, or somebody else just came on staff or something. It's like, I don't think that there's a whole lot of people, at least right now in our church, that can be like, oh, how's paying for that, all this kind of thing, but more just kind of like, I wonder how we're paying for that. I'm sure it's fine, but just wonder. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So just kind of want to bring us in so that you can kind of understand what's going on. Great. I'm making sure I cover everything. So what we're going to do first is go over current income and expenses, and then we're going to talk about how that's going to change come August 1st. So like roughly the move-in date, what changes once we move in, and then want to share some financial goals for what things are going to look like going forward. And like I said, this is just bringing you in, but also vision for like why do we give and what does it go to and why does it matter? I think they're big questions for you and me. So the current monthly numbers are this. So this is an average of January through April. So January 1 through April 31. Our average monthly income as a church, $25,000, expenses almost $13,000, and so we've been running a surplus every month on average of $12,500. So about 50% of what we've brought in, we've been saving for the first 4 months, which is really awesome. And a lot of that, is because we're not paying rent. Praise God. So and that's the big reason why we're not in financial trouble right now, because we've been trying to steward everything, even though we've been running. We're saving as much as we've been spending on average, but we haven't added anything to the expense line items basically for the first 4 months because we've been anticipating spending more on the building to make sure that we can get that taken care of and wanting to be in the best financial position possible when we do start so that we have a good launching pad and do everything we can to not just be burnt out by the end of it, right? So there on your handout, there's percentages on there of different major categories of expenses as a percentage of the whole. You might care about that, you might not. But I think I like seeing that. So you can look at that if you want to. Yeah, okay, we can move on. August 1st, what's going to change August 1st is we're going to start paying rent and utilities. So our rent is $7,500 a month, which is a steal for what we're getting. It's a lot of money, but it is a steal for what we're getting. So $7,500 a month in rent, and we're anticipating about $1,000 a month in utilities, give or take some as we get going. So if you keep our budget exactly what it is and add in rent and utilities, the surplus goes from $12,006 to $4,001-ish. So you will also see on your document the percentages, those same categories once rent and utilities jumps in and just kind of how that changes things. Does that make sense? So let me see that real quick. Awesome. The last thing you see on the percentages, the goal of monthly expenses as a percent of income, that's where we want to go. That's the target for us as a church, is that we get to the point where payroll makes up that percentage of our expenses, facilities, giving, etc. Does that make sense? So that's a goal that we want to work towards, and understandably we're not there right now. But that's where we're headed to. So, yeah, so giving is giving to things, outside of our church. So you can, be looking over those right now, but that just kind of is what it is. And I think that what I see when I look at this and what our board sees when we look at this, we were just talking about this the other day, going over all of this, is that, I kind of look at it as the August 1st number, playing with the utilities and the rent and utilities, assuming that as part of the expenses because that's real life, that's normal. So looking at that with the surplus that we're running, I'm super encouraged that we're running a surplus right now. I mean, that's amazing. And it's not a small surplus. It's not huge, but it's not small for sure. It definitely is significant. So I think that considering the balance that we're shooting for at the end of the project, which is $20,000, which I hope to be really conservative. We've got a goal, like I said on the document. I'd like to be at the point where we have at least 3 months of income as a savings. I do that personally, and so why would we not do it? I think it's probably a pretty common financial goal to have at least that. So, we've got some ground to make up there or whatever, but so things are maybe, they're healthy for sure. They're not super tight, but they're not, hugely amazing, but they are going really, really well. And so I think that what I'm most encouraged by is that 2 years in, considering everything that's going on and all this kind of stuff, is that I think that we're really financially healthy. We have no debt. We don't owe anybody money. When this project's over, we owe nobody money. It's just us, from here on out. And I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I'm really, really encouraged by that. And I hope that in seeing these numbers, in doing the building journey, and now in showing you these numbers, I hope that you can see that as a church, as a staff, as a board, as a pastor, as a person, I'm fully committed to living a life of faith, believing for expansion, risk, and an unhindered yes to Jesus, and equally committed to wisdom and good stewardship. And I think that that's what I see when I look through all of this, is I think we're doing a good job of that. That on the building side, it's absolutely insane, but we really think God's in it, and I think he's shown that he's in it. But when you look at the month to month, we're not stupid, and we're not looking for problems, right? We're looking to really do the best that we can all the time. So I hope that that's something that you see in these numbers, kind of beyond the numbers. The last thing I want to talk about on this is some financial goals going forward, and the first one is pay Sam. So what that means is that I am fully paid by the church budget. Sam is not. He is paid about 30-ish% by Antioch, Indy. The rest of his salary comes from a team of supporters that he gathered before they moved here. So we've gone up to 30 or so percent as a church over the last 2 years. I really want to pay him 100% because of course we want to be paying our staff by ourselves. So before they moved, they just reached out to a bunch of people and said, hey, this is what we feel like God's calling us to do. Do you want to jump on our monthly support team? And people did, and they've stuck with them for the last 2 years. And so my goal is to get that done as soon as possible. And as you can see in the numbers, it looks like August 1st, we could pull the trigger on that, which is really exciting. So that's a huge goal for us as a church, and that's been something that I've been really carrying, for the last 2 years. It's like, we got to get this going. So that's really number one, is become completely self-sustainable as a church, which I think that we're getting there. As we look forward to staff, part-time staff. So I don't remember what the dollar amount is. That's like a 20-hour a week. I forget what the rate is. That's like so a part-time staff person is like $1,200 a month per-ish, so just FYI. That's kind of how we look at it. I'd love to get to the point where we have monthly ministry budgets for the different things going on. So like right now, we don't really have budgets for like kids or anything like that. It's just sort of like get the animal crackers. And that's great. And and the mints. So get the mints and get the coffee, but I'd love to get to the point where we can start having ministry budgets month to month. And that's not so that we can be spending money on things, but when we have the money, we can empower people to do their thing. So like Beth is going to be taking over kids here that's kind of in process to taking over kids, which is amazing. And I want so badly, and I think it looks like we're going to be in a really good position to at least take a really good step towards this, but like we got to pay people like Beth who are going to be owning the kids, and like driving that and dreaming for that, expanding that. Like we've got to give honor where honor's due on that kind of stuff, and whenever we can. So that's, for example, so like a Beth type of person would be kind of that start point there. And then, like I said, we want to get to the savings of 3 months of expenses. Last thing on this, the financial goals is on, speaking of paying Sam and paying me, just want to explain real briefly sort of the Antioch movement model, I guess, for how salaries are set for pastors and everything like that. So there's a model that we adhere to as a church that's part of the Antioch movement, that essentially nobody gets paid more based on position, because the heart behind that is that we don't, on the money side of things, don't want to try to be showing, like, we don't want to pay people more just because of a certain gift that they have that somebody else might not have. So it's just an effort to value people equally. And so there's sort of like a base starting number that everybody's at, and that number goes up based on experience or either previous experience or years spent like at the church. So essentially the increase comes from faithfulness, not your gifting. Does that make sense? So the number that is right now is that Sam and I are both equally paid $55,000 a year. So the way that number came from is basically that's when we moved here, it was like we need to pick a number, and we kind of just take averages of a city or some areas and some professions like teachers or different things like that. And it was like, well, we think that's a fair number to get started at. So that's what we stuck at. It hasn't gone up over the last 2 years because we're just not in a place to do that. And there's no benefit package or anything like that. So I could give examples, but if you can think of it, it's not there. So that's it is what it is. So that's where we're at, and I say that because so that's where we're at. That's what we're trying to make up for Sam. Is that's what that rest of that $2,700 is, finishes off his monthly salary. Like I said, I'm being paid by the church. So all that to say, at this point, the cost of adding a part-time person is $1,200 a month. The cost of adding like a pastor, that type of a role, is when you get into salaries. So they're gonna be hourly and salary. There's room for different things in the midst of this table. That we're able to put those numbers at whatever we want. It's just everything's consistent. So, but that would be something that like a board of elders or a board of advisors would create and all of that sort of thing. So anyway, so the cost of like adding staff, for example, $1,200 a month for like a part-time person or so. And then at this point, like the cost of a pastor or pastoral position is like $55,000 a year. So that's everything.